Hello guys, so in this video we're going to continue with the API creation. In the previous video we created the wallet API. So in this video we'll continue with creating the API for transactions. So let's get started. First of all, let's create the transaction model. Transaction. Okay, so that would be another document. Yeah, transactions, obviously. And implement serializable. Let's create some fields of it. Let's annotate with data. Okay, so this, as mentioned previously, this replace getter and setter and some another nice annotation like equals and hash code. Yeah, something like that. So Lombok does some nice job for you. So first of all, you need to have an ID, of course, private string ID, of course, and transaction need to have a wallet ID, right? Okay, sure. And a transaction need to have title and description, string, title, and description, obviously, and the list of images. So private list string and image. Okay, so why we store this in a list of string? So the images will also be documents, so we store the list of ID of such document inside this. And we need an amount, private amount, also currency. This is kind of redundant, but you need to have currency, right? So, and also the wallet need to have an owner ID. No, the transaction need to have an owner ID. So in the case that a wallet that's shared by many people, then we know which or who created that transaction. So something like a family wallet. I don't know if that is a thing. And also private. Yeah. And the created date. Okay. So private local date time created date. Okay. And annotate this with created date. So this annotation would insert the date when it is created. And well, while this is nice, I think for future improvement, we can let the user insert this field, because sometimes you want to record the transaction from the other date. But anyways, we need to also have transaction type. So that would be an enum, withdraw, or deposit. So let's create this enum here. Transaction type. So income's expense would be okay, but yeah, okay, let's do that. Income and expense, and go back to this transaction, and we have type, right? Private transaction type and type, and also transaction probably need to have a category. So something like you gasoline, grocery, books, or something, entertainment, private string category here, and that completes our transaction. Okay, now let's continue with creating the transaction repository. Okay, transaction repository, and also that would extend Mongo repository. You should be familiar with this because we created that before. Extend Mongo repository, and that would be transaction and string, because the ID is string and make sure repository. Okay, something like that. So what operations we need here? So we need to obviously delete all by wallet ID, right? So void delete all by wallet ID. Yeah, so string wallet ID, obviously. And another operation we need to do is to find all by wallet ID. So we list the transactions by wallet ID, and obviously we don't list all. We need to have pagination. So page transaction and find all by wallet ID. Okay, so yeah, exactly. We don't need to import this. Okay, import that to make it cleaner. And another operation, I guess we probably need, that would be find by the wallet ID and type. So, for example, the user want to get all the expenses or all the deposit. So that is possible for them. So let's try page transaction and find all by wallet ID and type. Sure. Oh my god. And that's it. That is everything we need to do in the transaction repository. Now let's go ahead and create the transaction service. Transaction service. So service, yeah. And as always, require our constructor. So transaction service, let's create the transaction service here. So let's start with we need the repository. So final, yeah, obviously we need the current user service and also the transaction repository. Okay, final transaction repository transaction. Okay, so we also need to let me see. Okay, so let's create a transaction. Okay, no, we don't need this. We don't need this method public. Let's transaction create transaction. So what do we need to validate here? So we need to see that the user create the user create a transaction to the wallet that the current user own, right? So we need to wallet repository. In such case, right, final wallet repository. So we make sure that wallet repository find by owner ID and ID. So yeah, so we need to do this. Okay, let me expand this. Okay, so we find with the current user and the wallet ID in the transaction. If that's not found, then we throw an exception. Okay. Okay, and now we set the. Probably we need to verify that the transaction need to have the title. So if transaction the title equal transaction or empty, of course. Transaction method is empty, then it is required. And finally, we set the owner of the transaction to the current user transaction. Set owner current user, and we return transaction repository and save. So this concludes our create operation. Also, I think we need to validate that the transaction must have a type, so either in or out. So if transaction get type null, so we will throw a new exception. Okay, probably we need to extract this into a method. So validate transaction. Okay, because probably we need this method to in when we update the transaction also. So public transaction update. Oh, sorry. Transaction, and also validate transaction, and we update the transaction. Okay, return transaction and save. That's it. And now go ahead with the deletion of the transaction public void delete string transaction ID on. Yeah, so we need to find the transaction if make sure it exists. Okay, var transaction repository, so find by ID. So this is the method provided by the CRUD repository. So transaction ID or else throw. Okay. Okay, nice. Okay, transaction not found. And also, when we file that transaction, we need to verify that the current owner is the current caller is the owner of the transaction. So need to. Okay, this would be another validation method. Okay, transaction not found. And now we can safely delete the transaction. Okay, and that's it. That is all method. Okay, we need another method. Obviously, we need to have the method to list the transaction. So public pay response transaction. So list, and obviously we have the page size and the number. So yeah, exactly. Wow, that's fast. So we need the wallet ID, and also we need this method to validate that the caller is the owner of the wallet. And yeah, this is actually correct. So we concluded the implementation inside the transaction service. Now let's go ahead and create the controller for this transaction. Okay, so similarly, I'm going to create a transaction controller and REST controller, of course, and request mapping. That would be API and transactions. And what do we need to inject? That would be the transaction service. Transaction service. Okay. Create method. Post mapping. Public. No. Transaction. Create w request body. Transaction. Okay. Transaction. Okay. And we return transaction service create. And also this is response status created, right? Created. Yep. So that is 201. Then put mapping. Public transaction. Okay. update request body transaction and we return update transaction. Okay. Now go to the delete mapping. Response status, no content, sure, and public void delete. Okay, and we need this ID. Okay, that would be path driver, sure, string ID, and yeah, delete ID. And finally, the list method mapping. So we need to pass the wallet ID. So this is wallet ID. So that would be sure. Nice. So that is it. What is, oh no, this get mapping. Sorry. And that is the transaction controller. Now we have the wallet controller, we have the transaction controller. Everything should be working to create the transaction and wallet, but we also need to have support for uploading images. So that would be what I'm going to do next. Okay, before I end this video, let's try to test if the APIs is working properly. So let's start the application. Yeah, so let's open Postman. That's simple. Okay, so 1991, I guess. So that would be a new HTTP request. Just HTTP localhost 1991 and API wallets. So let's try to get this. And obviously, you know, we need the authentication, right? So let's try this because this expires in 1 day. So authorization, bearer token, put it here. Make sure to delete this quote. Okay. And we have it here. Okay, so let's try to send it. Okay, you see that the API responds okay since we have no data. So I'm going to also copy this new HTTP post. Let's try to create a wallet. Okay, so body would be raw. Okay, JSON. So what is the wallet model? So obviously we don't need the owner ID, title, description, and balance. Probably this. Okay, so title, my first wallet. Description is not necessary, but let's. Okay, first wallet. Okay, currency that be USD, and finally balance. Balance 1000, right? Something like that, and make sure we have authorization bearer. Okay, if this works, let's try. Send. Okay, you see that a wallet is created, and go back to the get, send, and obviously we see it here, my first wallet. So that is working. I think that there's no problem with the transaction. So in the next video, we're working with the file upload API, where we configure a bucket and the keys to that bucket, so we can connect with the Spring Boot API. I'll see you in the next video.